Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 107 of the Random Thoughts Show.
Hi, everyone.
Today, we want to talk about swimming and the importance of strength training and the things you want to be working on to improve swimming power, efficiency, streamlining, all that fun stuff.
Yeah. So can we take a moment to just appreciate and acknowledge how fun it is training swimmers?
Yeah.
So we have a partnership with the Cheltenham Swim Club, and it's awesome. We train swimmers here and there and had success with them over the years, but to have a whole not
Basically
the entire squad, but most of the squad here training with us.
The core advantage squad of the Cheltenham squad.
Yeah. They're just great. They're so focused. They're so meticulous. And they're not, but still they have fun. They're really good to coach.
Yeah.
And I think we know we can make profound differences because they've had some real breakthroughs.
Well, I just had states probably about a month ago.
Short course
states. And I talked to a few of the girls and they were like, 8 out of 9 PDs.
Can we talk about how funny the girls are with it? So one of them comes in and I won't name names, but I go, how'd you go? Oh, okay. And I go, oh, so not so good? Because they were primed, they were ready.
Yeah, they were beautiful taper.
I was like, this is going to be good. So I was really excited. And her reaction was like, oh, God.
Everything crashed and burned.
My tummy sunk a bit. I was like, oh, did we stuff up? And she's like, okay, I got 8 PBs out of my 9 events. I'm like, how is that just okay?
3 gold, 3 silver, 2 bronze, whatever.
And in the end, it's something like we had, I don't know, like 35 events across our
group. Yep.
35 events competed in, and some ridiculously high level of PBs.
It was like 30 plus. It was like 80, 90%. Yeah,
it was ridiculous. Just great. And it's a testament to the coaching of the club because those guys are Anthony and Jez are nailing that side of things. I think they have a bit of a less is more in relative terms.
Swimming is a high volume sport. Yeah.
But I think they've got a bit of inspiration from Bart Cummings. It's part of why we've got a good philosophical...
Can you tell the Bart Cummings story? Because I don't think enough people knew this. Because I forget it sporadically, and then you tell the story, I'm like, just keep that in mind. It's a good one.
Yeah. So Bart Cummings is the most successful horse trainer in the history of the Melbourne Cup. And he is famous for racing his horses lightly. Like his belief is that if you don't thrash your horses, you race them lightly. Like you've bought them because you've bought them and you've bred them as thoroughbred
because they're genetic
because they're amazing. It's your job to get them ready, but it's the same as all the top end trainers. Minimal effective dose, get the right amount of stress. But yeah, my favorite, and so he's brilliant at that, and he's got a bit of a I can't remember. Is he still with us? It's terrible. Anyway, we'll find that out. But he the famous quote was, someone was asking him how much he charged to train their horses, and he said, it's let's say
$1,000 a day.
Yeah,
whatever.
$1,000 a day. It's $2,000 if you help. And it was just a very blunt but also gentle way of saying we're going to do this my way.
This is my way. I've been doing this for years. I'm very good at this. Yeah, more work is not going to be better. Shut up. Go away.
I just love it. But yeah, so the Cheltenham guys are really well prepared in that respect. And but I had this feeling in the pit of my stomach that was, we're done.
When you spoke to these athletes.
Yeah, but actually they did great.
Yeah.
So for us, and obviously we're playing a little part in that, and the athletes are putting the work in, the coaches are nailing the periodization and all their technical stuff. But we did have quite a few people have significant improvements around areas like kicking and just their general ability to maintain good posture in the water.
Because the kids have only been in our gym for a couple of months now. It's not like it's been a year's process to get to that. It's been quite quick. And so we should talk about some of the immediate effects that the strength training they're doing and the work they're doing in the gym is having on their efforts in the pool.
Yeah. So I reckon the biggest one is thoracic mobility. I think if you think of the big rocks.
He says as Jacob sits up straight.
and I guess thoracic mobility has only become more like the stuff we do to increase thoracic extension and rotation. That stuff's become more important recently because everyone has posture is getting, the general trend for posture is a downward trend. We're getting worse and worse. We're on phones, computers. I mean, laptops in particular, the way the keyboard is at the same point as where the screen is, because it didn't used to be like that.
Because the screen has to be attached to it to make it portable. Yeah. That means for the keyboard to be at a comfortable position for your hands, the screen physically can't be a good position for your neck. So it's either you look after your neck and you type all the way up here, or you look after your arms and you actually achieve good typing speed, but your neck position is compromised.
It's not just that we're at desks more, it's also that it's become pretty default to operate out of laptops. And some people have docking stations and so forth, but still a lot of people, particularly students, they don't have setups like that. They are
on the go in libraries, at home, different places.
And so people are just thoracically tighter than ever. And so just really, when we did all our screening, all the analysis of all the athletes, the common denominator was you've got these amazing, pretty floppy bodies. Like if you're going to be good at swimming, you do have to have.
You've got to be loose.
You've got to have a level of hypermobility. But a lot of them had thoracic restriction. And so just unlocking the thoracic, just getting them to do, cat camels, back balls.
Yep.
Can we talk about a back balls?
Sure, go for it.
Jacob made a thing.
You say it like it's a surprise. I make things all the time.
T-mobes, is that what we're calling them?
Working on. So
if you've got a great title for a thoracic mobility device.
And back balls is taken is the problem.
Yeah, if you've got a title for that, let us know.
T-mobes, TX balls.
It's got to be catchy.
The thoracic visor.
The extensor. Extensor max.
3000. Extensor max 3000.
There we go, done.
But please submit your ideas.
Yeah, so we have our own little product, which is something we're going to be selling to our athletes.
They'll be on hopefully within the next week. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, they'll actually, by the time this episode gets out, they'll already be out. So
yeah,
cool. Get them. Yeah.
I'm really excited because it's one of the most important tools you can have to become a better athlete, I think, is to enhance that thoracic mobility. And it hurts a little, particularly if you're a rookie.
But it does get better, just like foam rolling and stretching. It gets less painful.
Yeah, and I think thoracic in swimming in particular, but in just sport in general and, humanity in general, perhaps, thoracic mobility is kind of shaping up as the lead domino for good movement quality. Because it's the lead deficit everyone has.
It's the worst spot, so it's the place of the greatest marginal gains. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Not even marginal. It feels like it's the place for the domino effect of gains. Yeah. Definitely. So thoracic mobility. So doing some basic work over the back ball. So our swimmers, all of them, or the T-mobes, the Extensor Max 3000, they do that every time they come in. And you just get better thoracic mobility from doing that. I think cat camel is really useful as well.
Yep.
It's an underrated exercise. It's easy to do. It takes 30 seconds.
You do 10 of them in a second up, a second down, very quick. Yep.
Really easy. And then you've just set yourself up to win with the other stuff you're doing.
So that's, I think another important thing that we do is the back plank. So there's one thing to improve flexibility through the thoracic, but also building strength through the muscles that maintain that position.
Just learning to actually get some time under tension and hold that.
Isometric hold on time under tension in a neutral position, just to get those erectors and all the muscles.
Have we got a video on how to do them yet?
Should probably put that on my list, shouldn't I?
Yeah,
I don't think we do.
I think it's an important one. Yeah, so step 1, loosen off the thoracic. Step 2, strengthen it up so that it can then hold in a good position, so it doesn't require as much loosening off. So if you do that, and then you do some good quality seated row with a nice scapular retraction.
Yep. So learn how to move your shoulder blades and retract them and squeeze them back. So your lower mid traps, rhomboids, all that stuff's working.
And that's the big rock, I think, because again, it's that people are slumped and they have difficulty getting the shoulder blades to meet each other. Like if you can get their strength there, that's huge. So attending to that's been great for them because all of a sudden the athletes report they just feel better in the water. They can just control their body better, and they've just got less tightness so that they can extend more. And then the really big one was hip flexor tightness, because for people that are naturally genetically flexible, my God, some of them were tight through their hip flexors. And I mean, it makes sense. Like you're kicking a lot with those legs, it's going to tighten up. So that simple thing of doing a hip flexor stretch.
Can we go back a step? So hip flexor stretching is we've spoken at length, almost ad nauseum at this point, about hip flexor stretching for vertical leap, for sprinting speed, for acceleration power, all those things. How does hip flexor stretching help in the water when you're horizontal? What's the benefit here?
I think so. It's hard to know what the biggest benefits are. I think they're all fighting because there's so many.
It's a list.
It's so many different benefits. One of the benefits is that if your hip flexors are tight, you jam up into an anterior pelvic tilt.
And so your belly pokes forward and your back arches.
Yeah. So all of a sudden you're just less streamlined. So forget everything else. You just actually, the shape that you're trying to cut through the water is worse.
Your butt is creating drag.
I forgot the name of the author, but the guy that wrote the Effortless Swimming. We'll see if we can. There's a Tim Ferriss interview.
Is he the guy that taught Tim how to swim?
I think so.
With the effortless sort of streamline method?
Yeah, and the quote was something along the lines of, it's important to have the size of the engine is important.
So stroke rate and swim power and pull and stuff like that.
But the shape of the vessel is really like a more streamlined boat is just gonna go better.
Yep.
And I think so. So step one, if you're loosening off the hip flexors, they can now get a more neutral spine, and all of a sudden their thoracic can be a little more neutral, and just they're going to be more on top of the water, less. So they're more hydrodynamic. They've got less resistance in the water because of that. Yep. So that's a huge one from just a simple little stretch.
Yeah.
But then if you layer on top of that the fact that if you've now got a nice neutral spine because you've done the hip flexor stretching, your glutes can now operate properly, and you can get more power out of them into your kick.
So now you're not just kicking with your quads and hammies, you're actually kicking from the hip entirely, hip extension and flexion up and down. Yeah, right.
And heaps of swimmers, when I went down to Cheltenham to have a look at one of the training sessions, they've got this awesome, did I tell you about the underwater camera?
Yeah, you did. That's pretty cool.
It's so cool. Underwater camera that projects onto the iPad, and so you can watch what the stroke looks like underwater.
It's just look up on like a 45-degree angle from side on?
Well, it's pretty much just straight.
Oh, like straight across the lane.
Yeah, so just like like a reverse periscope kind of.
Yep.
Yeah. And so what you can see is you can see whether people are kicking with their hips. You can see their core alignment, and you can see a really common thing, which is when people kick with their knees.
And they sort of like bend at the knee as opposed to driving from the hip.
Yeah,
right.
and it's difficult to explain in a video, but the negative of kicking with your knees is bigger than people realize, because
it's not just lost glutes, is it? It's not just using your big glutes. Muscles.
Well, it's you're having to try and overwork the quads, which we're probably not designed to do that particularly well. But the really big thing is if your kick is coming from your knees, then as you kick kind of up, that's propelling you. But as it's returning, because you're extending through the knee, your foot is now acting like a brake.
It's actually in this subtle way because of circular and torque and things like that. It's actually creating a scoop backwards, isn't it?
Yeah,
right.
Actually,
that makes sense.
It's like you're running with a parachute behind yourself.
Yeah.
Just slightly. A small parachute, but nevertheless, a parachute. So yeah, like the ability to kick from the hips with a neutral spinal position, that's massive. Because for so many of the strokes, really, really important. So I think those have been areas where we've got really good early gains without having to chase that much strength. Like you didn't have to do amazing things with it.
That's back balls and a hip flexor stretch. That's and a cat camel. That's 2 minutes of the 90-minute workout. Yeah, leaves a lot of time for some fun stuff after that.
Yeah. And so that was really good. And I think the other thing is getting people's mobility a little better so they can get better starts.
Yeah.
If you're more explosive off the blocks, that's a really good bang for buck as well. Physiologically and I think psychologically. Like if you feel like you're starting a race really well, I think that's awesome.
Was it one of our male swimmers, a sprint specialist, was telling us he nearly hit the rope, the lane rope when he jumped in?
I know
the flags rather, yeah. He said I nearly hit the flags when I dunked from like a proper aggressive start.
That's great.
So it's a good problem to have.
Yeah.
Because the more streamlined you are, the more mobile you are in the right spots, every stroke gets easier.
Yeah.
And so not only is the shape of the vessel better and you're kicking with the glutes now, but everything else gets easier. So if you're in longer events, 2s, 4s, 8s, 1500s, it's just save 1% of effort on every single stroke. That accumulates to a significant portion of energy that by the end of the race, you can then kick a lot harder.
And
just like distance running.
And not just by the end of the race, by the end of the tournament, the competition, because they do so many races. Carnival.
Yep.
the end of the carnival. So they're doing so many races.
9 events in 2 or 3 days. It's crazy.
Yeah. Can we do a little sidebar and talk about that athlete you mentioned?
Sure.
One of my favorite initial consults. Oh, it was actually a pre-initial consult. It was just a
chat,
sit-down chat. And he sat down and just sort of kind of folded his arms and said to me, "So, what can you do for my training?" And it was just great.
Sell me.
it was just, he had, I think it's a really good example of that level of ownership that these guys have on their careers. Like they really do treat it like pros. Like they're really professional about it. And, you know, my pitch was, well, I've got 30,000 hours doing this. I've picked up a few things.
Plenty of practice. Yeah.
There'll be some stuff we can do. But I just loved that sense of ownership they all have. If we could spread that to every athlete we coach, that would be amazing. Yeah.
Swimmers have a rare professionalism and focus from such a young age. It's impressive to see.
But they're still fun, not like uptight.
Yeah, it's they're enjoying the process of going about it. And I think they like training here too because they can actually chat a bit, not just at the end of sets. They can chat for the entire workout.
So anyway,
so we covered thoracic mobility and the importance of that for streamlining, getting a proper shoulder movement and motion through there. Hip flexors are really important for getting the shape of the vessel, getting the neutral spine.
And glute activation as well. So if you get the hip flexors right, but you haven't got your glute activation working, it's a bit academic. So it's the same stuff that you do for land athletes in terms of just learning to squeeze, because it happens to be in the swimming position, basically, glute raises. And then mobility and power, so you can get down into a good start position.
Yep.
And the other thing that we've been doing a little bit of, which I think is a missed trick, is making our swimmers run just a little bit, not much.
Tiny bit of movement skill and reactivity.
Yeah, learning to get a little bit elastic with those calves, because if you can be really good, and just stronger through the quads and hips, if you can be really good at that, you can push off the wall
on your turns.
On the turns. And turns can make a really big difference. They can set you up really nicely as well.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's been great fun. I mean, we've still got heaps to learn. I think the nuances of each stroke and where we're trying to go with each individual athlete, like there's still a lot more to go.
And as we know this cohort of swimmers and learn more about them specifically, I think that'll evolve as we watch them swim and see video of their dives and things like that. That all those things will evolve and grow naturally.
But I think it's turned out to be one of the areas where our methodology most suits what that population needs. Like they really need that stuff, and it's
nice.
And the big thing is they need it, and it gets measured very precisely whether you make a difference.
Swimmers love their numbers.
Yeah,
everything is quantified. Everything is in quantities and units, and
their goals were so specific. Their goals were, I was like, I love these goals because we'll know, you know, it's not just be better. It's like really specific, and we know when we've had success, and we will also know if we don't have success. It's very accountable. Yeah, I like it. Nice. Resources for swimmers.
I should link to the show. We should rather link to the shoulder random thoughts we did a little while ago. Yep. We didn't really touch too much on shoulders here, but we've kind of covered that before.
Just let's very briefly touch on it. The big thing, I think, there's that saying, don't just do something, stand there.
Yeah.
The idea that sometimes it's what you don't do is as important as what you do.
Sometimes doing nothing is actually the right move.
Yeah. And I think, not that we've done nothing, but we've been very conservative with our overhead pulling and pushing, because the swimmers, they have such a high volume of workload. And we've just gone, let's just get to know these guys. Let's get to train them, and we'll layer in more high-end work overhead later. And I think that's been a really good move as well. And that would be my advice is,
less is more overhead for sure.
Less is more at the start. You don't need to get everything else. Get the thoracic functioning great. Get the scapula functioning beautifully. Get everything working. Get your rotator cuff really strong. Get everything else really, really good. And then just very smoothly layer in that overhead strength. Because you get so much bang for buck from everything else that you can afford to just bring that in a little bit smoother. Yeah,
which for a lot of people is counterintuitive. Like swimming, lats, pull stroke. Well, that's just chin-ups. It's like, yes, but they're already doing thousands and thousands of those a week.
Of overhead reps. And also they most of them came in with pretty ugly chin-ups. They could muscle their way through it, but they were pretty grindy shapes as well. So I think less is more with that. Resources.
Shoulder episode.
Yep.
I've got a video on how to do the thoracic stuff. When we did our anti-desk series a while ago, it's got back balls, that's got cat camels in it.
And probably just the warm-up 2.0, like the hip flexor stretch.
Yep.
And the glute activation.
I think we've got videos on those two specifically. Yes, I'll link those two in there as well.
Yeah, awesome. All right.
Nice. Thank you, everyone.
Cool. Thanks, guys.